All right, we're on, John.
All right. Well, this is the third in a series of videos I'm doing with Fred Davis, the webmaster and launcher of Awakening Clarity Now, a man who regularly meets with clients and puts them through an experience that has deep meaning for them. I'm his editor. I do work on his books and on his website, kind of looking over his shoulder a little bit. So I'm very comfortable with him, and I know quite a bit about him. I've done some interviewing in my career as a writer. So Fred and I are just chatting about topics of interest to people who are spiritual seekers or who are interested in the topic. So Fred, anything to say before we start?
No, just hello, everybody.
All right. Well, the last time we were talking, we talked a little bit about your awakening experience, and we moved on a little bit from it. But there are a couple of things I wanted to treat before we go away from that, because it's always of interest to people who are searching for their own awakening or their own experiences. And, you know, every teacher probably says, don't measure yours by mine, but there are some things that are just, you know, kind of interest. And one thing that I wanted to mention is when we were talking, you tried to describe your experience as it's being like the wind in the trees, you know, earth and wind and so forth. And I'm sure that there are many people who are asking themselves, did you have a vision of this, or you know, did you hear something when this experience or this non-experience was happening? How is it that you can go back and make this description? What you know, are you remembering something specific, or are you filling in some way?
Well, what I'm really I'm filling in some way, because at the deepest part of an awakening, at the true awakening part, there's actually no Fred there to remember it. So there's no Fred there to report it. But that's but there is still a witnessing, and that's what I'm really reporting on is that it is on the witnessing itself as it's recalled. I'm coming from memory, but it's a pretty good. I mean, I have a good sharp memory of part of that time. I don't actually remember anything right after the awakening. I remember it's kind of like remember going to sleep. You know, in other words, I mean, we remember we were awake, and then we noticed that we're awake again in the morning, and we don't have any recall of that in between. There's a period of that in this, in the sense that there was the thing in my head that just like the chakra thing or whatever it was that turned 180 degrees, little BB thing that locked, and at that point there's a rush, and there's a rush. I can only say light and sound. I don't know beyond a rushing sound, a rushing light. And then I really don't remember anything for a while. I don't know. And I have no idea, none whatsoever, how long that dark period is. In the same way that you wake up, other than feeling tired, you don't have any idea whether you were out for a minute or an hour or a whole night. And I don't remember at all. I know that that the experience itself began in the mid-morning, which is when I would normally sit in that room. And I remember what happened, the sense of things when I initially stopped, when the blackout, if you will, whatever you want to call it. I'm a little sensitive to that, having been an alcoholic. So, but that in the post blackout time, then that's when the memories of the trees and the this and the that, there begins to be just enough of something that so that memory can incorporate it, because memory is really all of it's all about the character. I've had people who woke up with me brilliantly and wrote me 3 days later. This doesn't happen much anymore, but it used to happen in the early days. And they would say, gee, what happened? I know I didn't wake up, but what did happen? And the reason they can't remember that awakening was because they weren't present to remember it. But I could, ask them certain things about it, and it won't even strike a bell. And that phenomena, when I first encountered it, absolutely blew me away. I couldn't fathom how this could be, but now I see it. And the interesting thing is, those were always the explosive awakenings. And I don't get many explosive awakenings in my sessions any longer. I still get them from time to time, but not often. I don't encourage them. I don't try to bring about an explosive awakening, because I find they're detrimental. Because then we get lost in that thrill of the awakening. I mean, because the unit's not waking up, but oneness is waking up to itself, and but it's coming through this, and there is and that's thrilling. I don't know a better way to put that than to say it's thrilling. It's just, oh wow, because the big secret is out. Now you get it. We all got involved in non-duality to begin with because we were just pretty confident that there was something going on other than what meets the eye. And when we wake up, there's the concrete evidence that we were true. That's the reason you don't need confirmation. I mean, I give people confirmation. It's always nice to get confirmation after. I got it from a couple of teachers, but by the time you get confirmation, you don't really need it. So there's the rushing, there's the light, and then there's nothing. And and again, that could have been a minute. It could have been 5 hours. I don't know. It would have been limited to be at least being no more than a few hours, because I don't, I say that. Betsy came in that afternoon. And I don't know. I don't actually have any memory of that, so I don't know exactly when it stopped. When I came back. What I do remember is the first memories. I just don't know when they were. Those first memories are of that wind in the trees, and that sense of clearly beyond earth. I mean, not just out of body, but out of earth.
So it seemed something like being suspended in space or something like that.
Yeah, except for the fact that it wasn't there. There was nothing there to be suspended.
Mm-hmm, I see.
So when we think of the out of body experiences, they always show like a little shadow that moves from the body to there. You're having your out of body experience, and you're this ethereal shadow or something. There was none of that. I was the whole thing, which is of course the truth, but it was a very splashy experience of being the whole thing.
Right. And I would guess then that was there a perspective associated with it? I mean, so you were kind of a disembodied perspective in a massive space with no limitation.
And I was, yes, right, because it was the visceral seeing of or knowing of being the awake space. They always told us you are the awake space, and guess what? They're right. We are the awake space, and when we have everything reversed, which is that we think we're this body, and that space is what divides everything from everything else, when in fact we are the space itself, which joins everything to everything else. It doesn't separate anything. It's the thing that joins everything to everything else. And if you actually stop and pause and take a look at it right now, you can look around, and if you'll reverse things and notice, I mean, even if you just pretend, what if you were the space? If you were the space, how many things would you be looking at right now? Oh, if you're the space, You're looking at one field. You're looking at yourself. The space is looking at the space. So, and everything's occurring within this space. And, they told us, they told me, I remember in the days that, to look for that which doesn't come and go. And I immediately went out there looking for an object that doesn't come and go, because I heard that as a unit. I did not hear that as open space, that you are the awake space. I heard that as a unit. And it's like, well, I don't look like awake space to me. I look like a unit, because I believed I was this unit. But once we can begin to pierce that veil, and it's seen that we are, then it's seen that we are this vast awake space. So I guess when I talk about the wind and the trees and stuff, I don't even know this, John. I'm just kind of guessing at it, but it would seem to me that might have been when that perspective began to move back in close to Earth. In other words, to just the focus began, where we really began to focus. Because out here there was really no focus. There's just, right? And then as it moves in toward the earth, and it eventually focuses until I recognized that I was viewing things through this body. And that's the way that it was viewed, was that I see, I am the awake space, and now I see I am viewing things through this body. But prior to that, there was no body involvement whatsoever. There was there was nobody there. We say there's nobody home, but there was no physical body identification, because there was no body. There was just,
Well, in another era, what you're describing would probably have been called cosmic consciousness.
Yeah.
And I remember very well from the 60s and 70s that there were some discussions about whether you could function in cosmic consciousness or not, or whether simply experiencing that was all you could do. Then you just kind of packed up and lived the rest of your life as best you could, and so forth. But the current way of looking at it is that that's an experience, an opening experience.
Yes.
But we can reach that experience by a kind of inference, even when we're closed down and looking from the perspective of normal human and so forth. Some people call it a perfume. Some people call it a sense of something beyond, the material and so forth. So when you, but one thing that we do know from your experience is that even a powerful experience like this is subject to an erosion of sorts.
Absolutely.
And get back into a normal perspective. And so if to recap, even though you had a really fantastic experience or non-experience or whatever.
Who cares?
Yeah. Well, you came back, and because of the nature of it, which is, gosh darn it, not of the mind, your mind starts kind of trying to play with it and think, what the heck happened?
Yes.
How can I explain this?
Yes.
And you began what you call a hard oscillation, between thinking again, oh, well, I don't know what the heck happened, but, it was something, and I can't forget it, but I may just be this limited guy after all. And then, you would swing back, and you would be more in tune with what you had realized during this experience and so forth. And so you had to engage in some self-inquiry and some methods to try to figure out what had happened and how to integrate it or realize it, And I think that when we were talking about that, that's when you mentioned this guy, Box Top Fred,
Yeah, right.
when I asked you when you did self-inquiry as a part of trying to stabilize in some way, you were never able to find Box Top Fred, and you described Box Top Fred as being the picture on the front, on the top of a puzzle box. Inside there's just a mass of puzzles, and this is what that mass is supposed to add up to. And if you felt if you could find that complete coherent whole, that somehow that might clarify, or it might justify your sense that you're actually a limited human being, but all you could find was a jumble of pieces. Does that come close to it? Or
yeah, it does. The way that I described it, the reason I talk about this what I call Box Top Fred character, and a lot of people find this helpful because it's when we were able to, because everybody can do it themselves, and that's the whole point. Is that when we're talking about this stuff, it's all very lovely, but if you don't do the exercises that I suggest, the odds of you're moving into, and the odds of you noticing that you're in an awake state is very, very low. Because we're not trying to, when I talk about waking people up, it's a misnomer. They're already awake. What I do is I help them recognize that. And which is because the experience of not knowing that you're awake is identical to not being awake. So we can still use those terms. When awakening occurs, there's the loss of identification with the unit, in the sense that there's a sense of Fred here right now, just like there's a sense of John there. We're not trying to get rid of this sense of Fred or the sense of John. They're very handy, to have, because that's what he feeds us and clothes us and cuts on YouTube and does all this stuff, is that sense of Fredness. There has to be identification with the body, or the biology can't survive. But that can be just a minimal identification is enough. So what I would do use this inquiry in post-awakening, in pre-awakening and post-awakening, which is because I knew that what I was searching for, and I could not find. In other words, I was looking for I could not ever find that Box Top Fred, which is, we go to the store, we buy a jigsaw puzzle, then there's 500 or 1,000 pieces in the box, but on the front of the box, there's a picture of the whole thing. And it's that whole thing that we go looking for. And that's what I use in awakening sessions, is part of what I use in awakening session, to help people notice that they can't find themselves. That because there's this sense of, I want you to wake me up. Okay, can you find the one that you want me to wake up? In other words, when you say, I want you to wake me up, the first thing that you're thinking of is, we're thinking that perhaps that we're the unit. And what we're all hoping is that these units are going to wake up, that the Fred character is going to wake up. That never happens. Awakeness wakes up to itself. And when we begin to actually look for the one that we're trying to wake up, who is it that I'm trying to wake up? Can I actually find somebody to wake up? I use this thing in the sense that I can't bury your, I can bury the unit. I can bury the unit, but I can't bury you. The unit can die and I can bury it, but I can't bury you. And I can't wake up anything that I can bury. So I can't wake up. So this unit never comes to awakeness by looking, but instead, because what happens, we get lost in the content of our arisings. This story here is so compelling. In post-awakening, it's a compelling story too. Why would you try to overcome this? It's not only the best game in town, it's the only game in town. So but when we look at who is it that is trying to improve their conditions, because we see that this doesn't work. We spend all of our lives trying to get our conditions set in some way that it will please us, so that it will, and it'll be, now I'll be okay, and now this will be better. And I'm trying to collect the goods that will, and the conditions that will make this unit happy. But it's always that next thing that's going to make me happy. It's never the thing I just got. The thing I just got, I just noticed, you know what? I was sure this was it, but now I notice it's not it. And I know why it's not it, because it is out there. So I've got to get this other thing. Whatever content we pull in, whatever situation we can push the unit into, is never the right one. It's never the right one. So it's what we don't, and we know this doesn't work, but we keep thinking it will work because there's no other way for a unit to go. Once I have decided I am an independent being, then my whole life is built around satisfying the needs of this and the desires of this human being. And we just pile on, we just add on and on and on and on. And, I did a post yesterday on the sixth great extinction, which is just a thoughtful post. And I sent a link to it to my wife at work, and she wrote it back, and she said, "I just can't believe it. We're trading all the animals for endless junk." Because that's what we're doing. It's just there's endless junk out here, folks. It's just endless. It doesn't make any difference how much you get. I mean, we see it in action. We see billionaires scrambling to get more money. I mean, this is insanity. You're watching insanity in progress. So even though we know it doesn't work, we can't not do it, because that's what these units do when the consciousness that's inhabiting these units believes that it is the unit.
Okay, well, Fred,
wait just a minute before you go there, let me finish this. Okay. So what we have to do is move beyond getting involved in the content and inquire after what is it that's trying to straighten up its conditions. We can say the unit, but when we look at the unit, we'll find that, if you take the life force out of one of these units, it collapses, and within days it begins to smell, and it will make us sick if we're around it. So we burn them or bury them. So this precious thing this can't be it. This is a walking cadaver. It is, it is just an animated cadaver. And as long as they're animated, they don't smell and they can be fun. But that's really what it is. So if we have to take an inquiry and go after that thing which is inhabiting the cadaver. We have to go into that thing which is, we talk about, I'm all lost in this experience. Who's experiencing this? That's all that matters. When someone asks me a question, the ultimate answer for me every time would be, is just, who's asking? Because I don't always do that, because it's not particularly helpful after a certain point. But at some point, you can get with clients where there's nothing else you can say. Now, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask you, you speak of the body and you say, well, it's just a walking cadaver. The light goes out, you're finished, it gets buried and burned. Most people would agree, yeah, that's true. And some people think, well, we have a soul, and that continues on, or there's some equivalent of it, or something like that. But a lot of people stumble, I think, with the concept of self-inquiry. You could take a kind of a nihilistic view and say, well, okay, I'm a body, I'm a walking cadaver, that's it. So,
yes,
tell me something different.
I'm not telling you that you're a cadaver. I'm telling you that body is a cadaver.
Right. But if a person were to stop there, and this person thought that somehow the matter in the body created the consciousness and so forth, that person would say, so what? So what? But they might. Another step would be to say, okay, well, I may be a body. We can discount that. We can cut the legs off and so forth, as you've done in some of your, imaginary proceedings and so on. And I'm still there. I'm still there. If you could keep me alive with just a head, I'd still think I was there. So the mind then becomes a focus of interest, and it seems to me that that's one of the places where self-inquiry goes, to try to find the thinker or the person who is, animating, or who is inside the head of the body or whatever, and is, essentially in charge. I'm hungry, I eat, I want to raise my hand, I raise it, and so forth. So in self-inquiry, as I understand it anyway, you move into that area and you try to find Box Top Fred, or some image of Box Top Fred, some kind of coherent elements, And so I've seen you close your eyes and say, all right, you're looking at a field of black, and so on. But what I'm interested in is, when you close your eyes and do self-inquiry, what kinds of things do you find there that would be the equivalent of the pieces, the jumble of pieces that really never, fit together to make a coherent whole? What when you, say, who am I, or you say, who's inquiring or whatever, what bubbles up, in your frame of reference there?
The magic to self-inquiry, I will share with you here, the real magic of self-inquiry is when you write the word self-inquiry, use a capital S, because that's the only thing that can inquire. What happens is we begin self-inquiry as this unit. We don't have to do that. We can stand as awareness. If you just recognize, okay, my experience as that there's something right here, there's something talking, and there's something talking, and that's making these words come out. And the unit is what's being used to express those things, in much the same way that a pen is used to is what the ink comes through. But the pen doesn't know where it's going. When we're writing with a pen, the pen has no clue where it's going, and it doesn't even know what it's writing. It's just a pen through which ink flows. That's what I mean about these units, is that they are, so when we do self-inquiry, there's no one there to do that inquiry. That's what we want. So it's not little self-inquiry. There's no little self. We utilize this body. Awakeness itself utilizes this body to launch inquiry, and it's launching inquiry into what it thinks it is. But that which is looking for, so for instance, one of the ways that we do self-inquiry, the real key to this is if I say, it shouldn't be raining right now, and you say, so who is it that's saying that? When I go inside, I can't find anyone that wants it not to be raining. I just noticed that there's a, just kind of an urge that it was, that it shouldn't be raining. When it's actually looked at, that urge pretty much drops away. But what is it that's looking? Again, what is it that's looking? The only thing that can look is this consciousness. See, what we're doing is The problem that oneness is having is that oneness is looking for the other oneness. Oneness is looking for the cool oneness, because the only oneness that oneness can find is this one, and surely this can't be it. But if your oneness and let's just say you are hung with being oneness, you are oneness. And if you are oneness and you are looking for something else, how much luck can you have with that? There is nothing else. So if you are oneness and you're content on getting a view of yourself, open your eyes, look around, notice that your oneness looking through this unit at yourself. But there's only, this unit is oneness too. There's only oneness that can see oneness. So when we stand as that original awareness and recognize that the thing that's talking is not, the thing that's causing the talking is not the body. The body is not breathing, the body is being breathed. I am not living this life, I am being lived. And when I say I am, I mean the Fred character is being lived. It's this unit's being lived. This unit is not, there's no independent unit here. There's not even, well, I won't go there. Just say there's no independent anything. That's what they mean when they talk about emptiness, is that nothing stands by itself. This clock here cannot, there's tree here. There's everybody who handled it at the manufacturing. The clock can't operate. There's no point in a clock without time. Everything is pulled together. There's white and black. We have to have that contrast. Without that contrast, this clock is meaningless. So it's all the attributes. We can find the attributes of the clock. We can find endless attributes of a Fred. But we can't find a Fred. We think when we say I am hungry, that's not true. I am thirsty. I am whatever. When I say that, it's okay to. I don't mean that we have to change our language. I'm just saying that let's just notice that when I say that, I'm talking about this unit, and I need to learn to. I have to have the seeing of the truth, after which I learn to use this language without believing it. Because we get lost in language, and language is the dream, is the tool of the dream. Language is the fundamental tool of the dream. What you actually are is prior to language. That's the reason that talking about enlightenment doesn't work very well. It's the reason it doesn't work very reliably. I was watching some guy doing some Qigong the other day, and it was like, now there's transmission, because it's not going through language. There's nothing for him to, he's not explaining anything. It's just oneness being oneness, and you hang around that, some transmission will occur. That's that direct transmission beyond words and scriptures, like they talk about in Zen. So in order to use language, we have to first invent a Fred and a John. We have to move to duality because we don't notice that what you are really doesn't need language. Because there's nothing actually to be said. That's the truth of it. This is just entertainment. There's just this. There's not even anything to say about it. What's coming out of my words right now might as well be barks. Woof woof. Because it's ultimately it's meaningless. It doesn't mean that we don't honor relativity. We certainly honor relativity. I love Betsy. I love my dogs. I love you. I love my clients. I love this teaching. I love lots, and I don't know anything actually that I don't love. There may be things I'm not particularly crazy about. So, meaning that there's Fred unitness left there, Fredness left there. But
well, Fred, if you don't mind, let me go back and ask a couple of questions that may be a little bit stupid,
Stupid is good.
You know, so let's say you close your eyes, and when you close your eyes and you let things just roll, uh, do images occur in that black field or in some vague background or something like that? Do 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 phrases, bubble up into that darkness or whatever? What and let's just say it is consciousness contracted, believing that it's a limited thing. What I'm interested in is when consciousness comes through that, what the experience that you're having is, because a lot of people will close their eyes and they'll meditate, or they'll think, or they'll try to do the truthful meditation where you just let everything be as it is, and so on and so on. And they're never sure that they're doing it right, because gosh darn it. And what I'm interested in is how you could describe what goes on when that occurrence happens with you. The eyes close, and what happens in that space.
So, well, let me check so right now, if and I know this is going to sound really airy fairy, I just have to say it so that we don't get mixed up. The first thing that we need to recognize is that what I am already is allowing everything to be as it is. I'm not, and I'm never doing anything. And having said that, what I notice is that because there's a difference between reality and experience. And the experience is what you're asking about. And the experience, I close these eyes and I notice that there's a dark field. I notice that it's not like black because I know that there's light feeding through to the eyelids to some extent. But that's not what I'm really looking at. What I'm really notice is that there's just a dark field. What I've really done when I look at this dark field is I've simply drawn my attention, my magical divine attention. I've drawn it away from I've taken away or drawn it away from its objects. We're all addicted to objects. That's what we think, that the whole world, that we just think that these objects are what's important. And they're not. It's just the opposite. The true importance here is that the thing of true importance here, the no thing of true importance here, is the space within which these objects appear. So when the Fred unit closes its eyes, then the addiction to objects is pulled away enough that I can actually pay attention to attention. That's the reason I call it this process. There are 2 videos on it, folks. One's attention practice, and you go to YouTube, Google Fred Davis attention practice, and you'll come up with 2 different videos on it. Or you go to my website right now. Just put the links to that up yesterday. That post on the mass extinction. When this unit closes its eyes, it's the craving to pay such great attention to all of the physical objects is not eliminated, but it's lowered by a terrifically large margin. So now when I close my eyes, then naturally what the mind is going to do is it's going to now, since I'm not being taken back with all these physical objects, the mind is going to immediately jump to subtle objects. It's going to jump to thoughts and start clawing around with those, watching those. But when I close my eye, and that's what used to happen to me, I would sit down and meditate, and when I'd sit down and meditate, I'd notice the mind's going crazy, and I should be able to quiet this mind in order so that I could meditate. What I didn't realize is that all of that flurry is taking place inside of me. It's not my mind doing it. It's not me doing it. That's all character orientation. That the addiction to objects is through character orientation, whether they be subtle or gross. When we close our eyes, what we are, we're not other than attention itself. When we close our eyes, we can play attention upon attention. This is what we never do. What's the one thing attention never pays any attention to? Attention. And what this teaching does is it over and over and over and over again brings attention to bear upon attention itself. And instead of our thoughts about attention and what the thoughts about what the attention's looking at, we get lost in the arising. So when there's no arising, there's no gross arising, I've just got this dark field, then what I can do is notice, okay, there's this dark field. And when we notice the sense of being, we notice that we're alive, we recognize that this is not a sense-driven feeling, because we would know we were alive if we were in a sensory deprivation tank. So sitting here, knowing, recognizing I'm alive. How is it that I know that I'm alive? Well, there's a sense of presence which I can't quite put my finger on. And then there is a feeling of aliveness. And we can notice this feeling of aliveness within the body. We can do it with eyes open also. I mean, I don't need to close my eyes to do this. I'm doing this for the sake of example. But I can, because I can do this meditation. I can do this meditation while I'm talking to you. In other words, actively. I can't not do the meditation because it's what I am. But I can actively do the meditation as while I'm talking to you, meaning that the character is doing meditation. Or no, I'm just noticing that I am. It's not even the character. It's I, awakeness, am noticing that I am while this unit is talking about this process of noticing itself. So when I restrict my vision, then I'm able to look more closely at attention itself, and can I find where that attention. In other words, their attention is what? It's a focused awareness. Now begin to move the attention out. So take that focused awareness and begin to move it out in a 360, all the way around, and tell me, can you find a boundary to that? And if you can't find a boundary, notice that you didn't move that sense of being out in a 360 because there's no center. But the first thing we have to notice is that there's no boundary. When we notice that there is no boundary, then we can ask ourselves the question. It's a very simple question. If there is no boundary to this sense of being, can there be a center? And the answer is no. There cannot. If there's no boundary, there cannot be a center. Center is something which is equidistant to the edges. We're talking about something that has no edges. So and it is with this realization, this is the same thing with self-inquiry, is we simply notice we're not noticing a thing, we're noticing an absence of a thing. So when we're doing a self-inquiry and we're looking for box top Fred and I cannot find that central Fred, that hard candy center, I can't find anything other than a locus of thought, where thought is referring to other thoughts and conjuring up an identification with this, and now that I've got this, I've got my world. But none of that is true. When I can notice that there's no boundary here, and I can just notice it most easily with my eyes closed. But if I open my eyes and I look around, I'll notice that I'm going to notice that sense of being, your awareness itself. You're using your attention, this focused attention that's hearing these words right now. This attention, not the other attention, not the cool attention, not the really radical mystical attention. this plain old ordinary attention that thinks it's a Bob or a Sue listening to a Fred and a John.
Whoops. Thank you, Fred.
So take that attention and move it outward to see if you can find where does that attention stop. I'm going to suggest it doesn't.
Excuse me just a second. I put my timer on here and it's gone crazy.
I see. There you go.
Good Lord.
That's all right. So when you notice that sense of being, you can do it with your eyes wide open, which is that I notice that there's a sense of being. I know that I'm alive. When I say I know that I'm alive, am I talking about this unit? No, I'm telling you that there's an aliveness here. There's simply an aliveness here. It's what's inhabiting the unit. I can feel it. I may be able to feel it I may be able to feel it as a tingling. I may be able to notice it as a hum. I will notice a presence that I can't quite put my finger on. That's that perfume you're talking about. But there is something that I can almost put my fingers on, which is the feeling, that actual knowing feeling, that sense of being. And what that is that sense of being is simply where attention is focused on itself. So now you take that attention and you go out and see where's the end of this attention. You can't find an end to attention because it's the attention that's looking. So you can look for that boundary forever. And it's exactly what we're doing when we're on a spiritual search, is we're looking for something beyond the boundary of this. We're looking for that exotic outside God, that outside experience, that other experience. Because every time when I meditate, I have these wonderful experiences. It's just so great. I mean, the body just feels so good. My mind just calms right down. And it's just a wonderful experience. And then the meditation's over. I come back to this. My damn groceries are, I've forgotten, left them in the trunk, and and it's starting to rain, and I've got and all of this. I mean, in other words, I come back to here. So what I'm really doing with that meditation is that I'm using it to escape the non-dual experience. We think we're using the meditation in order to have a non-dual experience. You're already having the non-dual experience. There's nothing wrong with meditation. I'm all for it, but we got to understand it. Because the problem is that very too often we end up with a great meditator, and this great meditator becomes really, really good at escaping the non-dual experience. When you feel like you want the non-dual experience, the thing that thinks it wants a non-dual experience is non-dual experience. That thing that I want to, who's the I? If you, in the absence of a Fred, in the absence of a John, right here, right now, in the absence of Fred and John, what is left? If we were to subtract Fred and John from this scene, what would be left? So if we were to just subtract our opinions, you can leave the units in the picture. But in the absence of my opinions right now, can I actually find a problem? Right here, right now, try this at home. Do try this at home. Can you find a problem? No. What? Because there is no problem in the absence of a character's opinion. There's just this. And then we see something awful, and I'm in South Carolina. We just had that terrible church shooting. It's awful. But I still notice that it happened. And that when I say it shouldn't have happened, now I'm suffering from what I'm thinking about that incident that occurred at that church. What I can recognize is that it did happen, and there's no arguing with truth. Truth can appear to be brutal, but it's always true. And it's and really, in the end, it's not brutal. Because if you're oneness and you're playing all the roles, if you're the shooter, you're the family, you're the victims, you're the police, you're the everybody else. If you're playing just, I know this is a sore subject, but hard stuff like this has to be addressed. We try to avoid this stuff. We try to make this awful stuff the exception to the rule, and when we do that, we are lost back in duality. The idea is that we have to learn to accept this arising as it shows up, which includes this one, which included that one. So we can begin to get a grasp of this when we recognize that I consciousness this is my play, not Fred's play. It's my play. I've created Fred to play a role in my play. I've created a John the created makes it sound like there's an outside God. You can't speak without it smacking of that, but I don't mean it like that. It just happens. But there's a Fred, there's a Fred character, there's a John character. I've got a set in Florida. I've got a screen set here. And I mean, look at you. This one's so fake because this really is a set, right? I mean, it's, there's a room surrounding all this. So it's when I recognize I'm the structure of the room. I'm the stage set. I'm the stage hands. I'm the stars. I'm the makeup guy. I am the theater. I am the weather outside of the theater. There is no boundary to me. When you see this, then you can feel everything is just happening, and it's beyond the whims or desires of the unit.
Well, Fred, let me ask you, let's move to let's use a little bit less vibrant example of something bad in the world. And let's go back to the groceries in the car, for example. Now, you've said, well, not only am I not Fred who bought the groceries in my most essential part, I am Fred, but I'm the groceries and I'm the space between Fred and the groceries and so forth. Now, when people hear that, sometimes they will start to think, let's say they have a grocery problem. They're in the kitchen, they remember, oh my God, I left the groceries in the car. It's hot, the milk's going to be spoiled and so forth, and they remember your advice, or your observation, You are not just the person remembering that. You are the remembrance itself. You are the steps that are taken to the car. You are the space that you move through. You're the laundry hamper that you have to kick out of the way to get into the garage. You go in. Now, you look at this mess in the back of your car. The milk is boiled over. You know it's going to smell. You know that however you hard to clean. You try to clean that, it's going to be an issue for a while anyway. The natural inclination for people, for sincere people, is to say, I should be thinking this the whole time. I should be thinking, well, I'm the this, I'm the that, and so forth. In other words, they're thinking that should be in the back of their minds in some way. How would you address that problem?
Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to go get our groceries. That's the first thing we want to do. Take the practical for the next. What's the next practical step that I can take in skillful living? And that's to go out and get my groceries. What I'm thinking on the way to get the groceries is completely out of my control. In other words, what any character is thinking, that if it's thinking, it should be thinking about this stuff that we're talking about. It's wrong. It should be thinking about what it's thinking about. What we're talking about here is it's not a change of attitude, so that nothing wrong with a change of attitude. Don't get me wrong. I'm very, very big on positive attitude, but might as well tell myself a good story is a bad one, is what I'm saying. So But this knowing that I am the groceries and all that, that's not a thought. That's not something that I am thinking. That's simply the truth. But we will come to see that only when we awaken. And we're not going to awaken faster because, okay, I mean, there may be more peace in accepting the non-dual truth of this, which is even when it's not our truth, which is that, okay, so there are, so I am the groceries, I am the car, I am the house, and everything's cool. Great. That's probably going to be a little less suffering involved in that, but that's not living the truth anymore than going, damn it, I can't believe this. I did this again. What is supposed to happen in that moment is saying, damn it, I can't believe it. What I'm talking about is being truth, is recognizing, because what we think is when we are in pre-awakening and for some time often after, in post-awakening, there's this sense that, until it's more profound and stable, that I am this unit and then there is something beyond me, right? But we can get to a point where we recognize I am this, and there appears to be something here. In other words, or I am this is a way to put it. It's not 1,000% true, but it's a way to put it. I am this. And it's recognizing that there's, again, it's the self, it's with the capital S. Is when the self is looking at this. Because what's happening is the one that's running to the car and thinking, I should be thinking otherwise, is the little self. That's the ego saying, I should be thinking otherwise. In whose opinion? In my opinion, I think I should be more developed than that. Well, notice that your opinion is wrong. Because you're not more developed than that, and you're not supposed to be more developed than that. How do we know? Because when you're supposed to be more developed than that, you'll say, oh, and go get the groceries. It's still gonna hit me. I'm not gonna go, oh, I hit the groceries. Thank God I am the ice cream. It does not like that. There's the recognition of the practical relative level, which is, damn it, right? Which is, my ice cream is melted, but there's not going to be any suffering in that. It's just notice that the ice cream is melted. And then I have my choice. I can surrender to the circumstance of the melted ice cream, clean up my trunk, notice that that was what's supposed to have happened, and go about my day. Or I can scream and holler, clean up my trunk, suffer terribly for being an idiot that would leave his ice cream in the trunk, and go about my day. So it's not that our opinions of these experiences do not change the experience itself, but they do change the unit's experience of the happening. And when I say it shouldn't be raining, that doesn't stop the rain, but it does make this unit's experience negative. It makes it painful. It starts to suffer. And my God, we get in these spiritual stories, and I was in them too. God, I got to give up meat. I got to give up smoking. I got to give up drinking. I got to give up women. I got to give up gambling. I've given up most of those things, as it turns out anyway. But I gave up. But it was not. But all of that didn't happen through some spiritual strategy, because there's also this idea I'm not supposed to have any desires. Damn it! And what's your chief desire? To not have any desires. You're eating your head. You're eating your own self. The dog is eating its tail. It's not chasing its tail. It's eating its tail. When we recognize that, because it's been taught, this is not an accident nor a misunderstanding. It has been taught that we need to purify the body, the mind, and everything else in order to wake up, and that's baloney. Now, we will need to do some purification. We may need to do some prior to awakening. I can guarantee you're going to have to do some in post-awakening. But how skillful this unit is, operating in the world has absolutely nothing to do with awakening, because if it did, there wouldn't be awakeness talking to you right now, because this was an incredibly unskillful unit. And it remained an unskillful unit in post-awakening for quite some time. Now it's still unskillful in many areas, but there's been so much improvement that I notice that the unit gets proud of itself. Now pride arises because it's a better unit. In my opinion, I was perfectly fine the other way. When I was a drunk in the park, I was providing a much needed service. I was a great service to the world, which is I was very busy being the bad example. Jesus, God, don't drink and screw up or you'll end up like that guy. That's an important job. You know, mothers could walk their children to the park and don't do that. And joggers could come through with all health and abundance and oh, God almighty, you know, I got to give up this thing I'm doing, right? Because it's a very valuable job. The only problem with that job is that the unit that has that job is suffering tremendously. Now this unit's a spiritual teacher. We think that's very grand, but it's actually the only thing that makes it of more value than the bad example is the fact that I have a broader audience. But if there had been a camera on me and I had been on the internet as the bad example, it would have been an equally valid for the unit to be doing. I mean, it wouldn't be, we say it wouldn't be skillful, but even that is from an opinion. It is skillful. How do we know? Because there's only skillfulness in truth. I'm in a really dicey location there. I think I'll not go further. But because we can only stand as much of this thing as we can at a single time. Even when we wake up, if we think I've got it, we're insane, because it just keeps rolling, coming and coming and coming and coming.
Nothing to be done about that. You can't put your hands against it and stop the flow, right? You know, it simply has to. You have to find some other way to deal with it, you know, other than just resisting it and judging it all the time.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's happening anyway. You know, because we talk, you know, because what I've discussed. So we think that surrender is something that we do. It's not. Surrender is simply noticing powerlessness. It's just simply telling yourself the truth. When an alcoholic walks into his first AA meeting and says, "My name's Bob and I'm an alcoholic," alcoholics have a terrible fear of doing that because, oh my God, I'm going to give up the last bit of control that I have. They don't have any control. That's the reason they're going to AA. They're not giving up control. What they're doing is giving up the illusion of control. When the day that I quit drinking, and this is just a great example based on addictions, but it's the same thing. You can substitute drinking and thinking, and it'll work every time. So, but the day that I quit drinking was the day that I told myself the truth about the truth. I just recognized it, which was I had noticed for years that I could not quit drinking. What I hadn't put together was that I couldn't quit trying. I couldn't drink successfully. That was plain as day. I could not drink successfully. And I had always thought my problem was, how do I drink successfully? It was just, and notice that I could never accomplish that. The recognition that I can't quit trying to drink successfully. That was what kicked my ass, because now I got no way out. I'm powerless. I'm completely screwed. I can't drink and I can't not drink. I can't drink successfully and I can't quit trying. In other words, what I've got is what? I have an out of control unit, and every single one of these units is out of control. That's just where it's out of control to the point that it's not working in very well with all the other units. But all of these units are out of control. They do what they do. And we can have, and when I say we, there's no we, I'm talking about awakeness. Awakeness can have, but what we feel like we can have influence, but it's all indirect. The influence is just caused through seeing, is that I see the truth, which is I see. Which is, instead of trying to control this unit, I just noticed that what it's doing is incredibly unhelpful. right? It's just unskillful. It's painful. It's not in the best unit. It's not in it's not in the long-term benefit of that unit to continue to wind that pattern, to continue to run that pattern. That's an unskillful pattern. There's no one doing it, and there's no one that can stop it. But when it's seen that that's an unskillful pattern, that pattern will begin to unwind. Once we have seen it through it really, really deeply, what I call penetrated, once we have penetrated that pattern, it will drop away of its own accord. You can't drop it, it will drop you.
Well, that's a good note, I think, Fred, to stop on. You know,
okay.
Somewhere down the line, I hope we'll do another one, because I have a lot of questions about.
We're going to do another one. I'm game if you are.
So, but at any rate, as always, Fred, you know, very entertaining and very enlightening. What you have to say, very straightforward. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot out of it. I certainly have. So we'll wrap this one up. It's gone on a little longer than our others, but lots of good content there. So,
well, thanks, and thank you for being my straight man, John. You know, that doesn't work without the straight man.
I always appreciate a straight man.
That's right. Thanks. Appreciate it. Bye-bye, everybody.